Now, let's get to media freedom and those police raids last week. There are some serious issues to consider here, and I'll speak to some experts in just a moment. But first, you know how shrill a lot of the coverage has been. But what about the hypocrisy of many in the media and in politics? Have a look at this from outgoing ABC Insiders host Barry Cassidy last week.
And who would have thought that the topic in my last week in 2019 would be freedom of the press? A freedom, quite frankly, facing its most serious challenge in decades. This is not alarmist language, it's not hyperbole, it's a real and present danger. Not for nothing did the New York Times this week pose the question, is Australia the world's most secretive democracy? The AFP says this was just a standard operation, and so why all the suspicion? That's why it smacks of politics. It looks like a big show put on simply to deter whistleblowers and investigative journalists. The ABC story was clearly in the national interest. National security was not the issue. As the Law Council has pointed out, the problem arose from changes to the Criminal Code in 2018. Those changes did not ensure that the media would never be accused of a crime simply for publishing material in the public interest, material that went to misconduct or maladministration by governments or others. That has to be rectified as a bottom line. Otherwise, Australia could drift dangerously close to a police state.
Now, on its own merits, this is a reasonable argument, except for the hysterical references to a police state and the like. Police raids are a concern, and we need to discuss protections for whistleblowers and journalists in order to protect the public interest. Many journalists and politicians are now claiming to be warriors for free speech.
At every moment along the way, Barry, Labor has had concern for the national interest to make sure that we are protecting journalists' freedoms and the freedom of the press.
The telling point here, though, is that Labor is beating the drum of press freedom now when the last time it was in power, just 6 years ago, it put up laws to provide de facto regulation of the print media. This was a draconian plan. It would have seen a government watchdog supervise the Press Council, forcing compliance with its content demands. And it would have imposed a nebulous public interest test on media deals, a level of government control over print media never seen before. Many of us objected to it strongly at the time, but incredibly, many journalists, especially at the ABC, were willing to roll over, as the Daily Telegraph's Piers Ackerman pointed out on Insiders in 2013.
You and I are old enough, but it seemed that a generation of people in caucus aren't, old enough to remember that in November 1989 the Berlin Wall came down. Right, and there was euphoria across the world at the liberation of a shackled people.
Okay, where are you going with this?
Well, one of the things that
Stalin link again.
One of the things that the Soviet Union and every despotic totalitarian government has always done is attack the freedom of the press.
Piers Ackerman, the human headline. Here we go.
This,
and in what way?
I can't believe that I'm sitting on a program with three journalists, and you think that freedom of the press is a laughing matter. I am absolutely I can't believe this, Karen.
Give us a chance, Piers. Give us a chance.
A chance? Well, go on, laugh now, and I'll finish. Because this is what this government is trying to do in a backdoor manner is pick up the cobbles of the Berlin Wall and reconstruct the same sort of totalitarian control on the media.
Can we go back to West? Do you think there's been some hysterical reaction to this?
I say nothing. Barry, I'm sorry.
In what way is this such a monumental attack on freedom of speech?
On freedom of the press.
And freedom of the press.
Because you said, when you're talking to the laughing minister over there a few minutes ago, once you have a government-appointed authority who has oversight...
I'm just...
to ensure that the regulator does what the regulator says it will do.
Exactly. Yes. Then that regulator becomes answerable to the government. Why are Australians so passive?
Did the proprietors have it coming? Given the examples that Stephen Conroy gave us and the evidence that was led at the inquiry, did the proprietors have this coming because of their attitude towards it?
Wow, did the media have it coming? Well done, Piers Ackerman. Despite the acquiescence of Insiders and the ABC, objections by News Corp and Fairfax and other media organisations saw those laws or those proposed laws dropped. It goes to show we need to be ever vigilant for freedom of the press and freedom of expression. Journalists and others shouldn't pick and choose when they fight, depending on which side of politics is proposing the changes.